The sirens cut through the cold Manhattan night as the ambulance tore across the bridge, its blue lights flickering against the glass towers. Inside, Grace lay on the stretcher, her breaths short and panicked, her hands clutching her swollen belly. She was only 33 weeks along. Too early, far too early. Her hair stuck to her cheeks, damp with tears, while the paramedics pressed gently on her abdomen, asking her to stay awake, to keep talking, to hold on for just a few more minutes. But Grace couldn't stop shaking. The last image in her mind was Tyler's face, red with anger, twisted with something she no longer recognized. She had seen him furious before, but tonight something inside him had snapped. One shove, one strike, one fall against the edge of the wooden table. The crack in her ribs wasn't what terrified her. It was the warm rush of fluid down her legs and the sudden, merciless tightening in her stomach. "Please, don't let my baby die," she whispered, her voice faint under the wail of the sirens. The paramedic squeezed her hand. "Stay with me, Grace. We're almost there." New York Presbyterian's emergency bay flooded with white light as the doors burst open. Nurses ran toward them, shouting orders. Grace felt her body being lifted, pushed, turned. Everything blurred, the ceiling tiles, the bright lamps, the cold air brushing her skin. Her vision dimmed, and for a moment, she thought she heard the heartbeat monitor stutter. Meanwhile, across the city, in a ballroom glowing with chandeliers at the Plaza Hotel, Richard Hall held a glass of champagne, smiling politely at a donor until his phone buzzed. One glance at the caller ID, his sister's trembling voice. The words that shattered his world. "Richard, it's Grace. She's in the hospital. It's bad." The glass slipped from his hand and shattered. Within minutes, he was in his Mercedes S-Class, speeding through Fifth Avenue traffic, the city lights streaking past like frantic stars. His chest tightened with fear and something darker, something rising from years of buried guilt. When he finally reached the hospital and saw his daughter's torn, blood-stained gown, Richard's breath froze. And then the doctor approached with a sentence that made his knees nearly buckle. "Sir, we need to talk about what caused the premature labor. If, before the flashing lights, before the cold hospital corridors, before the world learned her name, Grace Hall had been a quiet, gentle soul, someone who believed that kindness, if given enough time, could soften even the hardest hearts. At 26, she taught preschool in a small private school in Brooklyn, the kind where children carried lunchboxes decorated with cartoon stickers and teachers knelt beside tiny desks to tie shoelaces. Grace loved the simplicity of it, the crayons, the laughter, the way children trusted without hesitation. It made her feel useful, steady, grounded. She had grown up in a different world, one wrapped in privilege and expectations. Her father, Richard Hall, built skyscrapers for a living and reputations for a legacy. Grace, however, craved a life untouched by wealth. She never flaunted the expensive education or the Fifth Avenue upbringing. Instead, she moved into a modest Brooklyn apartment and chose a career that paid in hugs rather than bonuses. Her friends teased her, calling her the gentle rich girl, but she would just laugh. All she wanted was a life built on authenticity. And then she met Tyler. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon at a Starbucks near her school. She had been grading alphabet worksheets on her MacBook Air when he approached, flashing a smile that felt warm enough to melt insecurities. He was charming in a rugged, unpolished way, nothing like the men from charity galas or Park Avenue dinners. He spoke with sincerity, he listened without checking his phone, and he made her feel seen. For a girl tired of the polished expectations of her world, Tyler felt like rebellion wrapped in affection. Their first months together were tender. Tyler brought her takeout after long days, surprised her with small notes, walked her home under flickering street lamps. When he held her hand, she believed she had finally escaped the glass cage of her upbringing. She introduced him to her family with timid hope, but the moment Richard looked at Tyler, really looked, Grace sensed the storm brewing. Her father saw danger where she saw potential. He warned her gently at first, then firmly, then desperately. But Grace, young and hungry to prove she could choose her own happiness, mistook concern for contempt. The fights were brutal. Words flew, tears fell, and one winter night, Grace packed a duffel bag and walked out of the penthouse, choosing love over legacy. She and Tyler married in a small courthouse ceremony, no diamond ring, no grand vows, just 2 signatures on paper, and a kiss that promised new beginnings. They moved into a cramped one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but Grace told herself it was perfect because it was theirs. For a while, it truly felt that way. Until the first outburst. Then the first bruise. Then the first apology whispered through clenched teeth. Grace convinced herself it was stress, exhaustion, money problems, anything but the truth. When she found out she was pregnant, she hoped it would change him, soften him, remind him of love. But something else grew in the shadows of that apartment. Tyler's anger, unpredictable and escalating. And just when Grace thought she could still endure it, something happened that would shatter every illusion she had clung to. Because the night she told Tyler the baby was a boy, everything inside him broke loose. Long before the ambulance lights painted Manhattan blue, the city itself had already shaped the fate of Grace and Tyler. Their worlds were separated not just by income or upbringing, but by architecture, by skyline, by the air each of them breathed. Grace came from a home high above Central Park, a penthouse where sunlight spilled across marble floors every morning and where Richard Hall signed multi-million-dollar contracts with a Mont Blanc pen at a desk facing the Manhattan skyline. The Hall residence was silent, polished, curated. Fresh white orchids on the table, art pieces chosen by designers. A kitchen hardly used except by caterers during charity events. As a child, Grace would stand by the floor-to-ceiling windows and look down at the tiny yellow taxis crawling below. She felt safe there, wrapped in comfort, but also trapped by expectations she didn't choose. Tyler, in contrast, grew up in a cramped apartment in Queens, the kind with thin walls and neighbors who yelled through them. His mother worked double shifts at a diner. His father drifted in and out of temp jobs. Tyler learned early that respect wasn't given freely. You earned it with your fists, or you didn't earn it at all. The city's noise toughened him. Its unfairness hardened him. By the time Grace met him, he carried invisible scars that she mistook for strength. After they married, Grace insisted they live modestly. She chose a small Brooklyn apartment with warm brick walls, mismatched furniture, and a second-hand couch that sagged a little in the middle. To her, the space felt human, real. She cooked simple meals there, folded baby clothes she bought on sale, and painted a soft blue accent wall in the corner that would become the nursery. Sometimes, when sunlight hit just right, the room glowed with a gentle warmth that reminded her why she had left Fifth Avenue behind. But the same apartment made Tyler feel exposed too close to neighbors, too aware of what he lacked. Every time he saw a Mercedes glide down their street or walked past someone in a tailored coat carrying a Cartier bag, resentment pricked at him. He began working late nights at a club near Midtown, surrounded by wealthy men whose tips for bottle service equaled a week's pay. Instead of motivating him, the contrast deepened his bitterness. Grace felt the shift in the air long before he ever laid a hand on her. The apartment that once held laughter now echoed with slammed doors and muffled curses. The nursery wall she lovingly painted became something she avoided looking at. When Tyler tossed his jacket across the room or kicked off his boots without care, she felt a strange fear curl beneath her ribs. Still, she tried to save what they had. She lit candles, made dinner, called him during breaks, just to say she missed him. She didn't realize he had started letting darker influences shape him, men from the club who boasted about control, power, dominance. They fed his insecurity, whispered poison into already bruised pride. And one night, after overhearing them mock him for letting his rich wife dictate his life, Tyler walked home carrying a fury Grace had never seen before. And the moment he stepped inside their apartment that night, everything in the air changed just seconds before the first explosion of violence. Tyler Miller had once seemed like a man carved from resilience. To Grace, he looked like someone who had survived storms and somehow remained standing. But the truth was darker. Tyler had survived storms only by becoming one himself. Beneath the warm grin he showed her at Starbucks was a lifetime of unresolved rage, insecurity, and the desperate hunger to feel powerful in a world that had always made him feel small. Before he married Grace, Tyler had moved from job to job, security guard, delivery driver, part-time bouncer, never staying anywhere long enough to build a stable life. His charm could open doors, but his temper slammed them shut just as quickly. When he stepped into the club near Midtown, where he eventually worked nights, he found a world that fed every part of him that Grace didn't know existed. Loud music, flashing lights, wealthy men tossing $100 bills without looking at them, it all stirred something bitter inside him. He saw men who had everything he didn't: confidence, money, women who hung onto their arms, cars with glossy black paint, and engines that purred like power itself. And in their eyes, Tyler was nothing more than the man who guarded the ropes. A nobody, a separator of the elite from the ordinary. And nothing stabbed deeper into his pride than being reminded of what Grace came from. At home, her softness irritated him. Her patience felt patronizing. Every time she suggested they budget carefully or reminded him of their rent being due, he heard her father's voice behind her words, mocking him, judging him. Tyler thought love meant control. He believed a man should be feared enough to be respected. That's what the men at the club always said, laughing over expensive whiskey, as if cruelty were a skill worth mastering. When Grace told him she was pregnant, something twisted in him. Instead of joy, a cold anxiety spread through his chest. A child meant responsibility, expectation, comparison. It meant tying himself forever to a woman whose family could crush him with a single phone call. The insecurity festered. Slowly, he transformed. The first time he yelled, he apologized with flowers. The first time he grabbed her arm too tightly, he blamed stress. The first bruise he left on her skin, he kissed with trembling regret. Grace wanted to believe him, wanted to believe the good man she had fallen in love with still existed somewhere. He counted on that. His apologies became less sincere, his temper grew sharper, his voice louder. He began checking her phone, asking who she was texting, accusing her of thinking she was too good for him. Some nights, he wouldn't come home until sunrise, pockets lighter, eyes darker. Rumors floated through the neighborhood, arguments overheard through walls, heavy footsteps, a woman's muffled cries. But Tyler didn't care. He was spiraling, and he expected Grace to spiral with him. What he didn't know was that Grace had already told someone else she was having a boy, and that someone had congratulated her. And Tyler had overheard it. That tiny moment, that innocent joy, was enough to ignite the fuse he'd been hiding under his skin for months. And on the night he confronted her about it, the rage in his eyes was unlike anything she had ever seen, something that made her realize she might not survive what came next. The night it happened, Brooklyn was unusually quiet. A light rain tapped against the windows, soft and steady, like the heartbeat of a city half asleep. Grace had just folded a tiny stack of baby clothes, white onesies, little socks she bought on sale, a blue blanket she'd been knitting for weeks. The nursery corner smelled faintly of lavender. For a moment, everything felt peaceful, almost hopeful. Then the apartment door slammed so hard the frame trembled. Tyler stormed in, smelling of alcohol and cheap cologne, his eyes bloodshot, jaw tight. Grace froze. She had seen him upset before, but never like this. His fists clenched and unclenched as if his thoughts were too violent to contain. "Who were you talking to today?" he demanded. Grace blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I heard you," Tyler snapped, stepping closer. "You told someone the baby's a boy." Her breath caught. "Tyler, it was just my coworker. I wasn't hiding anything." But he wasn't listening. He paced the small living room like a predator, circling its prey. The walls felt smaller with every step he took. Grace's pulse quickened. "So now you're sharing our business with everyone? Making me look weak? You think they're laughing at me?" His voice rose, shaking the lampshade beside him. "No," she whispered. "Nobody is laughing at you." But reassurance only stoked the fire. Tyler suddenly swept an arm across the kitchen counter, sending a glass tumbling and shattering on the floor. Grace flinched. The sound echoed through the apartment, through her bones. Her hands instinctively wrapped around her belly as if shielding their unborn son. Tyler's breathing grew harsher. "You think you're better than me because of where you come from? Because your daddy's rich and powerful? Is that it?" Grace stepped back. "Tyler, please, you're scaring me." "Good," he hissed. He grabbed her arm too hard, his fingers digging into her skin. She gasped, trying to twist away, but his grip only tightened. "Let go," she pleaded. Instead, he shoved her. Hard. Grace stumbled backward, her foot catching the edge of the rug. She fell into the corner of the wooden table, the sharp edge slamming into her ribs, knocking the air from her lungs. Pain exploded through her body. Then warmth. A terrifying warmth trickling down her legs. "No, no, no, no." Her voice shook as she looked down. Fluid pooled beneath her, mixing with broken glass and rainwater Tyler had tracked inside. Her vision blurred. A contraction ripped through her so violently she screamed. The scream carried through the hallway. Neighbors paused. A woman across the hall opened her door slightly, eyes widening as she heard Grace cry out again. A man upstairs rushed to his balcony, listening, uncertain whether to intervene. Grace tried to crawl toward her phone on the sofa, but Tyler kicked it away. "Don't you dare call anyone," he growled, panic flickering now behind his anger. "Tyler, the baby," she sobbed. "Please. View's safe." For a split second, something like fear crossed his face, fear not for her, but for consequences. He took a step back, rubbing his forehead, pacing again. Meanwhile, Grace's breaths shortened, her fingers trembling as she reached for the edge of a chair to pull herself up. Outside, footsteps echoed down the hall. A neighbor's voice whispered, "Should we call 911? Another contraction struck her like a wave breaking. Her water had fully ruptured. Her baby was coming too soon. And Tyler, desperate and unraveling, made the worst decision of the night. He reached for the apartment door, as if preparing to run. The elevator doors burst open as paramedics rushed Grace into the bright, sterile hallway of New York Presbyterian. Fluorescent lights streaked across her vision, harsh and unforgiving. Everything felt too loud: footsteps, clipped voices, the metallic clatter of equipment. Her body shook uncontrollably. She couldn't tell if it was fear, cold, or the relentless contractions twisting inside her like a storm refusing to end. "Stay with us, Grace," a nurse urged, but her voice sounded distant, as if coming from behind a wall. Grace tried to breathe, but each inhale caught somewhere deep in her chest. The pain in her ribs pulsed with every movement. She reached out, searching for something, anything to hold on to. Her fingertips grazed the stiff fabric of a paramedic's sleeve before another contraction crushed the breath out of her. I can't do this," she cried, her voice breaking. "You already are," he said gently. They pushed her into a labor and delivery room, bright monitors blinking to life around her. A doctor swooped in, Dr. Reyes, his expression steady, calm, but urgent. He examined her quickly, then looked her straight in the eyes. "Grace, your body is going into premature labor. We need to focus on keeping you and your baby safe. I need you to stay with me, okay?" His tone was firm enough to anchor her for half a second, but then reality hit her like a second blow. She was alone. Truly, terrifyingly alone. No mother to hold her hand, no sister's comforting voice, no partner whispering reassurance. Only cold air, fear, and memories she desperately wished she could erase. Tyler had left her bleeding, broken, terrified, left her and their unborn son to fend for themselves. Tears spilled down her temples and into her hair. Her heart felt heavy, bruised, hollowed out. How had she ended up here, this girl who once dreamed of a gentle life, who had believed love could fix anything? "Is my baby okay?" she whispered. Dr. Reyes hesitated before answering, and that hesitation shattered her. "We're doing everything we can, but he's early. Very early. 18. Thanks for watching." And more Vareshan. A nurse squeezed Grace's hand, but the gesture only made her cry harder. She felt herself slipping into guilt, into panic, into a darkness that whispered she had failed her son before he even had a chance. Her breaths became shallow, quick, uneven. A full-blown panic attack overtook her. The room blurred. Her ears rang. She felt weightless and trapped at the same time. She curled slightly, instinctively trying to protect her stomach from pain that had long since invaded it. "Grace, look at me," Dr. Reyes urged. "Focus on my voice. You're not alone. We're right here." But she didn't feel them. She didn't feel anything except fear and a crushing sense of abandonment. In that moment, she wanted her father despite everything, despite the distance, despite the pride that had kept her from calling him sooner. She wanted the version of him who used to carry her on his shoulders through Central Park, telling her she was strong, that nothing could hurt her. Another contraction hit. She screamed, and in the haze of agony and heartbreak, the door swung open, revealing a familiar silhouette she hadn't seen in nearly a year. When the hospital door swung open, Grace thought the pain had finally made her hallucinate. But the tall figure standing under the harsh fluorescent lights was unmistakable. Richard Hall, impeccably dressed even at midnight, silver hair slightly disheveled from rushing, eyes wide with a fear she had never seen in him, stood frozen at the threshold. "Grace," he whispered, as if terrified she might vanish if he spoke too loudly. Her breath hitched. She wanted to turn away, to hide her shame, her bruises, everything she had endured. But another contraction forced a cry from her throat, and Richard crossed the room in seconds. He took her hand gently, almost reverently, and for the first time in years, Grace didn't pull away. "I'm here now," he said, voice shaking. "I'm not leaving you again." Her tears fell silently. For months, she had imagined her father as an unmovable force of judgment, someone who would say, "I told you so." But the man kneeling beside her bed wasn't that man. His shoulders trembled. His eyes glistened. And in that moment, she realized something she had never known. He wasn't angry at her. He was terrified of losing her. Dr. Reyes cleared his throat gently. "Mr. Hall, we're doing everything we can, but she's in active premature labor. We need calm in this room." Richard nodded quickly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Just tell me what to do." Grace clutched his fingers as another wave of pain crashed through her. She sobbed into his palm. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to see me like this." He leaned closer. "Grace, none of this is your fault. If you goes, thanks for watching." She shook her head weakly. "Tyler?" Richard stiffened, his jaw locked so tightly a muscle twitched. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "I know." Her breathing faltered. "You know?" He hesitated, and for the first time, Grace noticed something new, anguish mixed with guilt. "There's a reason I'm here so fast. I didn't come because someone called me. I came because someone warned me." "What?" she whispered through trembling lips. Richard exhaled slowly, as if releasing a secret he'd carried too long. "One of my security contractors has been watching the building you live in. Quietly, discreetly. He didn't report anything unless it seemed dangerous. Tonight, he saw you fall. He saw Tyler grab you. He called me immediately." Grace's heart stuttered. The room seemed to tilt. You had someone watching my apartment?" "Yes," he answered, voice breaking. "Because I knew Tyler wasn't right. I knew something was wrong. And I was too proud and too afraid to tell you. I thought if I monitored from a distance, at least I could protect you without pushing you further away." Her lips parted in disbelief. Years of resentment, hurt, misunderstanding swirled inside her. She didn't know whether to cry harder or cling to him. But before she could respond, the monitor beside her spiked. Nurses rushed back into the room. "Her blood pressure is dropping." Dr. Reyes leaned over her. "We need to move now. Grace, your baby is in distress." She felt her father squeeze her hand, his voice trembling. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. You're going to be okay. Your son is going to be okay." But the machines continued to beep urgently. The room buzzed with panic. Grace's vision dimmed at the edges. Her last sight before they wheeled her toward the operating room was her father's terrified face, and the shadow of someone standing in the hallway, watching them. For 2 days after the emergency C-section, the hospital room felt like a dim, suspended world where time existed only in heartbeats and quiet sobs. Grace lay weak, stitched, bruised, her body aching in places she didn't even know could hurt. The soft humming of machines from the NICU down the hall reminded her that her son, tiny, fragile, fighting for every breath, was alive, but not safely in her arms yet. The guilt gnawed at her like a cold blade. How could she protect a child when she hadn't even protected herself? Richard sat by her bedside, refusing to leave except for brief calls handled from his MacBook Pro. His presence, once intimidating, now felt like a shield she should have accepted earlier. Yet he never said, "I told you so." Not once. Instead, he poured her water, adjusted her blankets, answered her whispered questions about the baby. He spoke gently, as if afraid she might shatter again. But something inside Grace had already changed. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, like a small ember refusing to die. The moment she first saw her son through the NICU glass, a tiny chest rising and falling under wires and warm light, something fierce awoke in her. Not rage, not grief, something steadier. Resolve. She asked the nurses questions, every detail, every risk, every treatment. She took notes. She forced herself to stand, gripping the walker until her legs trembled but did not buckle. And when she finally made it to the NICU, the sight of her child wrapped in tubes didn't break her, it clarified her. She would never allow him to live in fear. She would never let Tyler near him again. She would never be silent. One morning, Olivia arrived, carrying fresh clothes and a gentle smile. "You look stronger today," she said softly. "I feel stronger," Grace replied, surprising herself with the truth of it. Olivia glanced at her arm, where faint bruises still bloomed under the hospital gown. "When you're ready, we need to talk to the detectives." "And to the district attorney." Grace nodded slowly. "I am ready." Later that afternoon, she sat up straighter in bed as Detective Bennett entered. Grace's voice trembled at first, but she told the truth, every shove, every slap, every moment of fear. The detective listened intently, her expression shifting from professional calm to quiet fury. "This is more than domestic violence," Bennett said. "This is chronic, escalating abuse, and you're lucky to be alive." Grace swallowed hard. "I know." She signed the official statements with a steady hand. The weight was enormous, but instead of sinking under it, she felt herself rising. She wasn't the girl who tiptoed around Tyler anymore. She wasn't the woman who excused bruises. She wasn't the daughter who ran from help. She was a mother, a survivor, a witness, and the world would soon hear her story. That evening, Richard brought her new clothes, a soft cashmere sweater and comfortable leggings. Grace changed slowly, looking at herself in the mirror. The tears, the bruises, the exhaustion, they were still there. But beneath them was a woman she barely recognized. Stronger, sharper, awake. She brushed her hair gently, lifted her chin, and breathed. There, in the dim hospital light, began her quiet transformation. Yet as she stepped into the hallway toward the NICU, a nurse hurried toward her, breathless. "Grace, you need to come quickly." Her heart stopped. Something was happening with her baby. Grace froze in the hallway as the nurse approached, breathless and pale. "There's been a change in your baby's oxygen levels," she explained. "Dr. Reyes is adjusting his support, but he needs you there." The world narrowed to a tunnel. Grace followed the nurse, her footsteps shaky but determined. When she entered the NICU, Dr. Reyes turned, his face steady but serious. "He's fighting," he said softly. "He just needs a little help." Grace pressed trembling fingers to the glass, tears gathering but not spilling. Her son's tiny chest rose and fell beneath the tubes and wires. Even in that fragile state, he radiated a strength she didn't know a body that small could hold. "Stay with him," Richard whispered behind her. "He needs your voice." She leaned closer, whispering through the glass. "Mommy's here. You're not alone." Her voice cracked, but her resolve didn't. After what felt like an eternity, the monitors steadied. Dr. Reyes exhaled in relief. "He's stabilizing. Good job, Grace." Good job? For the first time in months, she believed it. When she finally returned to her hospital room, Detective Bennett was waiting, notepad in hand, expression focused. "Grace, I need to ask one more question. And I need you to answer honestly," she said gently. Grace sat upright, bracing herself. "Okay. Before the incident, did Tyler ever threaten to hurt the baby?" Grace's breath stilled. She remembered the night 2 weeks earlier, Tyler pacing, clenching his fists, muttering about how a child would ruin everything, how she was trying to trap him. She remembered the way he punched the refrigerator door so hard the magnet holding her ultrasound photo fell off. She swallowed hard. "Yes, more than once." Bennett wrote something quickly. Her eyes sharpened. "Then we have grounds for escalation. This is no longer just domestic violence. This is endangerment of an unborn child." Grace exhaled shakily. It felt terrifying, but also righteous. Tyler hadn't just hurt her, he had endangered their son. And now, the law was shifting its gaze toward him. Richard stepped forward, his voice cold as steel. "Detective, whatever resources you need, legal, financial, investigative, I'm prepared to provide." Bennett nodded. "Good, because this case will draw attention once the media gets wind of it, and Tyler might try to spin the narrative before we can." Grace's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He fled the apartment before paramedics arrived," Bennett said. "He hasn't come forward since. Men like that don't run because they're innocent." Grace felt a chill crawl up her spine. Later that evening, Olivia arrived, carrying a folder thicker than Grace expected. "We pulled his financials," she said, laying the documents out on the bed. He's thousands in debt, running with dangerous people. And there's more. There were complaints filed against him at the club. One involved a woman who said he grabbed her. Grace's heart slammed painfully. She wasn't the first. She could have been the last. Richard looked at his daughter with a fire she had never seen in him, not anger at her, but fury on her behalf. Grace, this ends now. Not just for you. For anyone he might hurt next. Grace inhaled, feeling something rise inside her, a new version of herself, forged from pain and truth. Then let's end it. But before they could discuss strategy, Officer Ramirez knocked urgently on the door. Detective Bennett needs you in the conference room, he said. We located Tyler. If you want us. Grace's pulse roared in her ears. And there's something else, Ramirez added, lowering his voice. He's been telling people a very different story. Detective Bennett waited in the small hospital conference room, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above her. Grace entered slowly, Richard close behind, Olivia carrying a legal pad filled with notes. Bennett didn't waste time. Tyler's been talking, she said, sliding a folder across the table. And he's been telling everyone you staged the fall. Grace felt her stomach twist. Staged? What? My injuries? Bennett nodded grimly. He claims you slipped on purpose, that you were desperate for attention, that you were emotional, unstable. He's saying you threatened to hurt yourself if he didn't stay with you. Grace stared, speechless. The audacity, the cruelty, the absolute inversion of reality. He's telling this to who? Richard demanded, voice low with controlled fury. Neighbors, co-workers at the club, anyone who'll listen, Bennett said. He's already painting himself as the victim. He says you attacked him first. Olivia scoffed sharply. And somehow she broke her own ribs and induced her own premature labor? Bennett sighed. People like Tyler always rewrite their stories. And unfortunately, the public often believes the first version they hear. Grace felt her throat tighten. All she wanted was to protect her child, to heal. Instead, she was facing a storm she hadn't prepared for. Her hands trembled slightly, and Richard placed his gently over hers. We're not letting him get away with this, he assured her quietly. Bennett continued, there's more. He told officers he left the apartment because he was afraid of you, said you became deranged and attacked him. Grace let out a shaky breath. Why is he doing this? Because he knows the situation looks bad for him, Bennett answered. And he knows you have a wealthy family who can push the case. He's trying to get ahead of it. Richard leaned forward, his voice steady but dark. Detective, what do you need from us? Everything, she said. Medical reports, photographs, text messages, witness statements. If neighbors heard the screaming, we need them. If there were signs before the incident, we need to document them. This will become a public case. Grace swallowed hard. Public? Bennett nodded. Once charges are filed, Tyler will fight back publicly. Men like him don't just defend themselves, they retaliate. At that moment, Officer Ramirez stepped into the room, holding a tablet. Detective, you need to see this. Bennett took it, tapped the screen, and a video began playing. It was grainy, but clear enough. Tyler standing outside the club, surrounded by co-workers. He was animated, gesturing dramatically. She went crazy, he said on screen. Threw herself on the table. I tried to stop her. She's been unstable for months. Her rich daddy messed her up. Grace felt the blood drain from her face. The video continued. And now she's blaming me. They're all blaming me. I'm the real victim here. Bennett paused the footage. This video is circulating. It's already on 3 social media pages. Richard's jaw clenched so tightly his temple pulsed. We respond immediately. Olivia adjusted her glasses. We will. But carefully, let him talk first. The more he says, the more contradictions he creates. And contradictions are evidence. For the first time, Grace lifted her head, anger glowing beneath her exhaustion. He left me bleeding on the floor, she whispered. He almost killed our son. And he's calling me unstable? Olivia nodded. And that, Grace, is exactly why we're going to bury him with the truth. Bennett leaned in. Be prepared. This won't stay quiet. Reporters will follow this. Your name, his name, everything will surface. End quote. Grace inhaled deeply, her voice steadier than she expected. Then let it surface. But before anyone could respond, Ramirez's radio crackled. Unit 12 requesting backup. We have Tyler Miller attempting to flee the borough. Grace's heart slammed. And Bennett looked up sharply, realizing this was no longer just a case, this was the moment the hunt truly began. Detective Bennett didn't hesitate. With a sharp motion, she signaled Ramirez and sprinted toward the elevator. Grace watched them disappear down the hallway, her pulse racing. Tyler trying to flee meant one thing. He knew the truth was closing in. Richard placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Grace, we let the police handle him. Right now, our focus is building the case." But Grace wasn't thinking about courtrooms. She wasn't thinking about strategy. She was thinking about her baby fighting for every breath. And the man who nearly ended both their lives was running free through her city. Olivia spread a set of files across the conference table. "We have more than we thought. A neighbor from the second floor came forward this morning. She left a voicemail saying she heard the screaming and the crash. She described hearing you cry out." Grace blinked in surprise. "Someone actually spoke up?" "People don't always speak in the moment," Olivia replied. "But they speak when they think it matters, and it matters now." Bennett returned minutes later, slightly out of breath. "Units are tracking Tyler's phone. He's on foot near the Manhattan Bridge. We'll get him." Grace exhaled, but anxiety still tightened her chest. Bennett sat across from her. "While we wait, I need to go through something important with you, your timeline. Every detail matters. Abusers depend on confusion. You're going to give us clarity." Grace nodded. Her voice trembled, but her words did not. She recounted the nights of shouting, the bruises she covered with makeup, the way Tyler punched walls to make her flinch. She told them about the fear she swallowed daily, the guilt she carried for staying, the shame she thought she deserved. "It wasn't your fault," Bennett repeated gently. "You were surviving." Grace wiped her eyes, nodding faintly. Then Bennett opened another file. "We pulled footage from your building's hallway cameras." Grace's breath caught. She hadn't dared imagine what might be on those recordings. The detective angled the laptop toward her. The grainy footage showed Tyler pacing outside their door hours before the assault, fists clenching, muttering to himself. It showed him shoving the door open, storming inside. Then, minutes later, Grace stumbling out, clutching her stomach, crying, Tyler grabbing her arm, yanking her back inside. Grace covered her mouth with her shaking hands. Tears blurred the screen. She could barely watch. Bennett paused the footage. "This corroborates everything you said. It shows escalation, intent, control." There was a knock on the door. Ramirez entered again, but this time with a grim look. "We found more," he said, handing Bennett a small evidence bag. Inside was a shattered phone. Grace's missing phone. "We recovered this from a dumpster behind the building. He threw it out before he ran." Grace stared. "He destroyed my phone?" "It's classic behavior," Bennett said. "Eliminate evidence. Silence the victim." Richard's voice darkened, and he thought he'd walk away from this. Olivia leaned closer. "Grace, the prosecution will want to meet with you soon. This case is turning into something big, larger than domestic violence. Tyler's attempt to flee makes him look guilty. The video, the witnesses, the medical records, everything is converging. It's one pros." Grace nodded, her resolve forming like stone inside her chest. "Good. He should be scared." Just then, Ramirez's radio crackled again. The room fell completely silent. "Units have cornered suspect Tyler Miller near the bridge. He's resisting arrest." Grace felt her breath catch. "And," the radio continued, "he's demanding to speak to someone." Richard frowned. "Who?" Ramirez met Grace's eyes. "He says he wants to talk to Grace alone." Grace didn't answer at first. She stared at Ramirez as if he had spoken in another language. "He wants to talk to me?" she repeated, her voice thin. Ramirez nodded. "He's cornered. Adrenaline's high. He's trying to negotiate. He said he'll only cooperate if he speaks with you." Richard stood abruptly, outrage flashing across his face. "Absolutely not. My daughter will not be anywhere near that man." But Grace didn't move, didn't blink. She sat perfectly still, as if something inside her had frozen. For months, she'd feared Tyler every slammed door, every raised voice, every unpredictable glare. She'd lived in a world shrunk by his anger. Now, for the first time, he was cornered. He was the one grasping for control. And he wanted her. Bennett's voice softened. "We won't let you near him. This is manipulation. He's testing boundaries." Grace closed her eyes. "Of course he is." The room fell silent as she inhaled deeply, lifting her chin. Something steely flickered in her expression, a new grace, not fragile but sharpened. "I'm done being afraid," she whispered. Olivia stepped forward. "Grace, listen to me. You don't owe him anything." "I know," Grace said, opening her eyes. "But I owe myself the truth." Bennett exchanged a look with Ramirez. "If you want to record a message, we can relay it to the officers. You wouldn't have to see him. It might help de-escalate." Grace thought of her baby in NICU, tiny, fighting so hard. She thought of the bruises still fading across her arms. She thought of the lies Tyler was spreading about her across the city. She thought of the years she spent apologizing for things she never did. And then something inside her clicked into place. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll record a message." Richard opened his mouth to protest, but the determination in his daughter's eyes silenced him. She wasn't doing this for Tyler. She was doing this for herself for the first time. Ramirez handed her a police body camera, set to recording mode. Grace held it hesitantly, her fingers trembling for only a moment before she steadied them. She took a breath. "Tyler," she began, her voice steady but cold, "this ends now. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You hurt me, you hurt our son, and you left us bleeding on the floor while you ran. That's the truth, and everyone will know it." Her voice grew stronger. "You don't get to control this narrative. You don't get to decide who I am. I'm done being silent, and whatever happens next is on you." She handed the camera back to Ramirez, her hands no longer shaking. Bennett exhaled softly. That was powerful. Richard's eyes glistened with pride and heartbreak. "My girl," he whispered, "you've changed." But just as one battle shifted, another erupted. Ramirez's radio crackled violently, officers yelling, sirens, chaos. "This is Unit 12. Suspect is escalating." "Repeat, suspect is escalating. To Bevor's. To Bevor." Bennett straightened instantly. "What's happening?" Static, shouting, then a voice. "He's on the bridge, railing. He's threatening to jump." Grace's breath caught. Her heart pounded painfully in her chest. "Put the message through," Bennett ordered. But before Ramirez could respond, the radio crackled again with a chilling update. "He says he won't jump if Grace comes to the bridge. If it's Strawn?" The courthouse in downtown Manhattan buzzed with reporters, attorneys, and the low rumble of anticipation. Grace had imagined this day 100 different ways, and none of them felt as terrifying as the reality. The bright marble floors, the echo of footsteps, the cold air that smelled faintly of paper and old wood. Her ribs still ached when she breathed too deeply, but she stood straighter than she ever had. Richard and Olivia flanked her like protective pillars. Detective Bennett walked ahead, pushing through the courthouse crowd with purpose. "Stay close," she murmured. "This hearing is just for the temporary restraining order and preliminary evidence, but it will set the tone for the entire case." Grace swallowed hard. "And Tyler?" "Already inside," Bennett answered, with his attorney. Grace felt a tremor run through her, but she didn't stop walking. She wouldn't cower, not today. When they entered the courtroom, her breath hitched. Tyler sat at the defense table, cleaned up, hair combed, wearing a suit that didn't fit quite right. But his eyes were the same, sharp, calculating. And when he saw her, a twisted smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. Her stomach flipped. Richard tensed beside her. "Don't look at him," he whispered. "Look at me." She forced herself to breathe. She focused on her father's voice, on her son's tiny chest rising and falling through the NICU window, on every moment she had survived to reach this one. The judge entered. Court is now in session. Tyler's attorney rose first, smoothing his tie dramatically. "Your Honor, my client maintains that the incident was an unfortunate accident. Mrs. Miller," he gestured toward Grace, "has been emotionally unstable for months. There are witnesses who will testify that she was erratic, distressed, and prone to self-harm." Gasps rippled through the seats behind them. Grace felt heat rush up her neck. For a moment, she couldn't speak, couldn't move. Then Olivia whispered, "Stand up for yourself." So she did. She rose slowly, painfully, every bruise on her body screaming, but her voice didn't shake. "Your Honor," she began, "I didn't fall on purpose. I didn't hurt myself. Tyler hurt me. Tyler threatened me. Tyler caused my son to be born too early." The courtroom fell silent. Tyler's attorney laughed under his breath. "She has no proof." Detective Bennett stood. "We do." She walked to the judge's bench and placed a flash drive down. Security footage from their apartment hallway. Audio captured from a neighbor's cell phone. Medical documentation from the ER. And testimony from several residents. The judge raised an eyebrow. Play the footage. The screen flickered to life. Tyler pacing. Tyler bursting through the door. Grace stumbling out, crying, clutching her belly. Tyler yanking her back inside. Gasps filled the room again, louder this time. Grace couldn't watch. She lowered her gaze, her hands gripping the table, but she didn't cry. Not this time. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Miller, would you like to explain this?" For the first time, Tyler faltered. His smirk faded into something darker, fear. Richard reached under the table and squeezed Grace's hand. She held on to him, breath steady. The judge straightened. Temporary full restraining order granted. And given the evidence, the district attorney is authorized to pursue enhanced charges. Grace exhaled shakily, relief washing through her. But as they exited the courtroom, a frantic intern rushed toward Detective Bennett, nearly breathless. "Detective, we just uncovered something new on Tyler Miller." Bennett stiffened. "What kind of something?" The intern swallowed hard. "A past incident, one that was never reported, and it involves another woman." The moment they stepped outside the courthouse, Grace felt the shift, the air thick with tension, the hum of voices rising before she even saw the crowd. Reporters swarmed the steps, like vultures, sensing fresh blood. Flashing cameras burst to life, microphones thrust forward, news vans crowding the curb. The story had broken, and it was spreading fast. "Mrs. Miller, is it true your husband claims you injured yourself? Grace, why did you leave the penthouse life for him? Is it true your baby was born premature because of domestic violence?" Grace froze. The barrage felt suffocating. Her bruises, her trauma, her pain now spectacle for the city. Richard stepped in front of her immediately, shielding her. "Back up," he barked, the commanding voice of a man who had closed billion-dollar deals and crushed boardroom opposition without blinking. "She will not answer questions today." But reporters pushed harder, calling her name again and again, cameras flashing so brightly she had to blink through tears. Olivia wrapped an arm around her. "Stay close. Don't engage." Detective Bennett guided them through the chaos, but the crowd kept swelling. Grace could hear snippets of conversations. "She looks terrified. Poor girl. Her husband's lying, you can tell. Thank you for watching. She should have left sooner." That last comment stabbed deeper than any bruise. Inside the lobby, Olivia pulled out her phone, scrolling quickly. "Grace, the story's trending online." Major outlets reposted the clip Bennett submitted as evidence. There's commentary everywhere. Grace's chest tightened. "What are they saying?" "Some are defending you. Others are calling it a messy marital dispute. But there's something else." Olivia turned the screen. A woman just posted anonymously claiming Tyler assaulted her 2 years ago. She says he threatened her if she went to the police. Grace's breath left her body. Bennett's expression hardened. "This is the past incident we discovered." She finally spoke up. Grace swallowed. "She's coming forward because... of me?" "She's coming forward because she's not alone anymore," Bennett corrected gently. "Your courage made space for that." Grace wiped tears from the corner of her eyes. For the first time, she realized her story wasn't just hers, it was a mirror in which other hidden voices could finally see themselves. But the media didn't care about nuance. They cared about spectacle. As they walked to the awaiting car, another wave of reporters rushed them. "Grace, do you blame yourself for what happened? Do you regret leaving your wealthy family for a violent marriage?" "Is it true," Tyler said, "you were emotionally unstable?" Grace stopped walking. Richard turned sharply. "Grace, don't answer." But she lifted her chin. Her voice trembled, but her eyes did not. "I regret nothing except staying silent for as long as I did." Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters surged forward. "My son is fighting for his life because of what Tyler did to me. That's the truth. And I won't let him rewrite it." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even Richard stared at her, stunned by her sudden strength. Olivia squeezed her arm proudly. But before they could reach the car, a young female reporter stepped into their path, holding her phone out. "Grace, Tyler just went live online." Grace's stomach lurched. "What? He's on a stream." The reporter pressed play. "He's talking right now." On the screen, Tyler stood in a dim warehouse, shirt rumpled, face flushed. His voice was shaking, not with fear but with manic rage. "She's lying," he spat. "All of them are lying. And if they think they can take everything from me—" He leaned closer to the camera, eyes burning. "They have no idea what's coming next." The video cut abruptly. Richard's face drained of color, and Detective Bennett whispered, "We need to get Grace somewhere safe now." Detective Bennett escorted Grace, Richard, and Olivia through a private corridor that led to the underground parking garage. The tension was suffocating, thick enough to taste. Bennett's voice was clipped and urgent. "We can't take risks. That live stream wasn't just anger, it was a threat. And a desperate man is unpredictable." Grace wrapped her arms around herself. She kept hearing Tyler's voice from the video, the simmering hatred in every syllable. She had seen him furious before, but never unhinged. Richard opened the back door of his Mercedes S-Class, guiding her inside as if she were made of glass. "You're safe," he promised, though his eyes darted around the garage, scanning every shadow. As they pulled out onto the street, Olivia's phone buzzed non-stop. Notifications stacked faster than she could swipe. "Grace, the live stream has over 400,000 views already," she said, voice tight. "People are sharing it everywhere." Grace's chest tightened. "And what are they saying?" "It's split," Olivia answered. "Some believe he's unraveling. Others think he's running from the truth. But some are sympathizing with him." Wonder. Grace closed her eyes, fighting the sting of tears. How could anyone sympathize with a man who left her bleeding, who endangered a newborn, fighting for every breath? But the internet didn't trade in truth, it traded in spectacle. Bennett, driving ahead in the unmarked car, radioed, "We're rerouting. Too many media vehicles are following. We can't lead them to where she's staying." Richard gripped the steering wheel harder. "This is harassment. This is a circus. Has a fashion. All the C's right from important." "It's a high-profile domestic abuse case involving a wealthy family," Olivia murmured. "The media won't let it go." Grace stared out the window as Manhattan's skyline blurred past. It felt like the whole city was watching her, judging, choosing sides. And she hated that. All she wanted was to keep her son alive and safe. But now she was a headline, a symbol, a target. When they finally reached a private, secured condo owned by one of Richard's business partners, Bennett briefed them quickly. "You're staying here tonight. I'll have officers rotating outside. Don't answer the door unless it's one of us. And no going out on the balcony, the reporters are using drones now." Grace's eyes widened. "Drones?" Bennett nodded with a grim sigh. "Tyler's live stream put gasoline on an already burning fire. He's trying to control the public narrative. And he's not done." End quote. Richard wrapped an arm around Grace's shoulders. "Let them talk. The truth will bury him." But Grace wasn't so sure. She felt vulnerable in a way she hadn't predicted, exposed to millions of strangers who didn't know her story, who didn't know her pain, who didn't care about the truth. That night, as she sat on the sofa with a blanket over her legs, Olivia scrolled through news updates. "There's something else," Olivia murmured. "The DA's office just released a statement responding to Tyler's claims." Richard leaned forward. "And? They're considering additional charges," Olivia said. "His live stream may be used against him. They said he displayed erratic and threatening behavior." Grace felt a flicker of hope, a tiny flame in the dark. But before she could exhale, Bennett burst through the front door, face pale, breath heavy. "We have a problem," she said. Grace stiffened. "What now?" Bennett held up her phone. "Tyler just released a second video." Richard's jaw clenched. "What did he say this time?" Bennett swallowed. "He claims he has proof that you were cheating on him." Grace's blood ran cold. And Bennett added quietly, "Millions are already watching." Grace stared at Detective Bennett, unable to process the words at first. "Cheating?" she whispered. "He's accusing me of cheating?" Olivia's jaw clenched. "It's a smear tactic. He's panicking and throwing mud because he knows the case is turning against him." Richard paced the living room, fury radiating from every rigid step. This is what cowards do. When they cannot defend themselves, they invent fiction. Bennett lowered her phone. "I watched the video. He claims he found messages between you and a man, someone he says you were planning to run away with. He edited screenshots, Grace, badly. But the public doesn't always look closely. Today." Grace pressed a hand over her mouth. She felt sick. "Who is he saying I cheated with?" Bennett hesitated. Dr. Reyes. Grace staggered back as if struck. No, she whispered. That's impossible. I barely know him. He's my son's doctor. That's why he chose him, Olivia said quickly. Someone the public can easily misinterpret as a comfort figure. Someone you've been seen with at the hospital. Grace shook her head, eyes tearing. This could ruin Dr. Reyes. He's done nothing wrong. He saved my baby. Bennett nodded. The DA already knows it's false. But this isn't about truth. This is about optics. Public pressure. Tyler knows how to weaponize chaos. Richard stopped pacing and knelt in front of Grace, taking her trembling hands in his. You listen to me. You are not responsible for the lies he tells. You are not to blame for the narrative he invents. Grace wiped her cheeks, steadying her breath. But what if people believe him? What if they think I'm the kind of woman who... You are not defined by what strangers think, Richard said firmly. You are defined by the truth. She inhaled shakily, nodding. Olivia, meanwhile, was scrolling through her phone rapidly. Grace, it's spreading fast. Hashtags, posts, debates. Half the comments are defending you. Half are ugly. Grace braced herself. How ugly? Olivia hesitated. Some are calling you manipulative. Others say you trapped Tyler with the pregnancy. Grace felt a dull ache in her ribs, emotional this time, not physical, a bruise on the soul. And a few, Olivia added, voice softening, are saying you deserved what happened. Grace looked away, her eyes stinging. How can people say that about someone they've never met? Because hurting others is easy when you hide behind a screen, Bennett said. But don't forget, so is defending them. And there are thousands defending you too. If one. Richard rose, pulling his phone from his coat. This stops now. If Tyler wants a public war, then fine, he'll have one. But it will be fought with facts, not hysteria. Olivia nodded. We release our own statement. Carefully crafted, emotional but factual. We highlight your injuries, your medical reports, witness accounts. Grace hesitated. Won't that make things worse? Only for him, Olivia replied. Bennett's radio crackled. Detective Bennett, be advised the suspect has resurfaced online. Another live stream. Bennett's head whipped toward the device. What now? The radio continued. He's claiming he has video evidence of Grace being violent in the past. Grace's heart dropped. What video? Bennett shook her head slowly. We don't know yet, but he's escalating, fast. The room fell silent, tension tightening like a rope around all of them. And then Olivia's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, froze, and slowly looked up at Grace with widened eyes. Grace, you need to see this, she whispered. She turned the phone around. On the screen was a video of Grace from months ago, screaming and crying, taken secretly from behind a cracked door. For several long seconds, Grace couldn't breathe. On Olivia's phone screen, a distorted, grainy video played her own face, red from crying, her voice breaking as she begged Tyler to stop shouting. She remembered that night. She remembered the fear. But she had never known he was recording her. He filmed me? She whispered, horror creeping through her veins. Olivia lowered the phone. He filmed you without your knowledge. And now he's twisting it. Detective Bennett stepped closer, jaw tight. This is classic emotional manipulation. He's using a moment of your fear to claim you were unstable. Richard's face turned cold. The kind of cold that didn't melt. He recorded my daughter while abusing her, and now he's trying to weaponize it. Grace felt dizzy. The room tilted for a moment. Why would he do this? Why now? Because predators plan, Bennett answered softly. They collect ammunition for the day their world collapses. And right now, his world is collapsing. Grace sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. She remembered that night with agonizing clarity, the way Tyler screamed about rent, about respect, about how she was lucky he stayed. She remembered begging him not to throw the lamp he'd lifted. She remembered curling into herself like a child. And now the world was seeing only her breakdown, not the violence that caused it. Richard knelt beside her. Grace, look at me. She lifted her tear-filled eyes. You are not the person he is painting. Anyone who watches that video with half a brain will see a terrified woman, not a violent one. But Grace shook her head weakly. People don't care about context. They only care about shock. Then we give them our shock, Olivia said firmly. Not lies, truth. Bennett nodded. We need to release your official statement now. And not just text, a video. Grace stiffened. A video? Of me? Yes, Olivia said gently. You telling the truth in your own voice. Calm, clear, human. Let the city hear who you really are. Grace hesitated. What if I break down? Then they'll see the truth even more, Bennett replied. Richard added, You won't be alone. We'll stand behind you. Slowly, shakily, Grace nodded. Okay, I'll do it. Olivia set up the camera. Grace sat upright, pulling her sweater sleeves over her wrists where faint bruises still lingered. Her eyes were tired, but in them burned something new, an ember that no amount of lies could extinguish. She spoke softly, but every word carried weight. My name is Grace Hall Miller. I'm the mother of a premature baby boy who's fighting for his life, and I am a survivor of domestic abuse. Her voice wavered, but her gaze never dropped. The video my husband posted was recorded without my knowledge during one of the worst nights of my life. I was scared. I was begging him to stop screaming at me. That isn't instability, that's survival. She paused, inhaled. I'm telling my story not just for myself, but for every woman who has been blamed for her own suffering. Richard's hand pressed gently to her shoulder. She continued. He hurt me, he endangered our child, and he left us there. That's the truth. When she finished, the room stayed silent. Olivia stopped recording, eyes shining. That was perfect, she whispered. Before Grace could reply, Bennett's phone buzzed violently. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting into something sharp and urgent. Grace, she said, voice tightening, the DA just called. Grace's pulse kicked up. Why? What happened? Bennett swallowed. Because another woman has come forward, and this time, she's accusing Tyler of something far worse. The room fell silent, every breath suspended in the air. Grace felt her heart stumble as she stared at Detective Bennett. Another woman? She whispered. Bennett nodded grimly. She came forward after seeing your video. She said she couldn't stay quiet anymore. Richard clenched his jaw. What is she accusing him of? Bennett hesitated long enough to chill the room. Assault. Severe. Years ago, she filed a report back then, but withdrew it because Tyler threatened her family. She recognized him the moment his name hit the news. She wants to reopen the case. Grace felt a wave of nausea. He hurt her too? Bennett sat beside her. Grace. Tyler has a pattern. You weren't the first. You're the one who survived long enough for the truth to reach daylight. Grace covered her mouth, tears burning but not falling. She suffered because of him, and no one believed her. No one believed her. Bennett agreed softly, until you. Olivia began taking notes again, practical even through the shock. If this aligns with our timeline, the DA will move for multiple felony charges. Domestic abuse, child endangerment, aggravated assault, coercion, witness intimidation, and now this new allegation. Richard's face hardened into something cold and immovable. Good. Let every one of his sins drag him down. Bennett's phone buzzed again. She stepped aside to answer, then returned with a heaviness in her eyes. That was the DA. They're preparing a formal press briefing. They want Grace to attend. Grace blinked. Me? Speak? Publicly? They want your statement to counter Tyler's lies, Bennett said. And they want the city to see the human being behind the headlines, not the caricature Tyler has tried to paint. Grace hesitated. Every instinct screamed that she wasn't built for microphones or crowded newsrooms or the sharp glare of cameras. But then she thought of her son Tiny, hooked to machines, alive because of a miracle. She thought of the other woman who had finally stepped out of the dark because Grace lit a match first. She thought of every moment Tyler made her feel small, unworthy, powerless. She straightened. I'll do it. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder. I'll be right there. A sudden knock rattled the door. Everyone jumped. Ramirez entered, slightly breathless. We've got an update. Tyler resurfaced again, this time near the club he used to work at. He's ranting, pacing, saying he's being set up by rich elites. Officers are surrounding the area. Grace swallowed. Is he armed? We don't know, Ramirez admitted, but he's unstable. Each appearance is more erratic than the last. Olivia looked at Bennett. If he's spiraling, he's dangerous. Not just to the public, but to the case. Bennett nodded. Which is why we have to move quickly. The DA wants to secure a warrant for full arrest on the new charges, and they want your video statement released immediately. Grace inhaled deeply. I'm ready. They arranged lighting in the living room. A plain backdrop, no makeup, no filters, just truth. Grace sat before the camera again, heart pounding. "This isn't just my story anymore," she began quietly. "It's the story of every woman who was hurt and silenced, and it ends now." She finished the recording, exhaling shakily. Not 10 minutes later, Bennett's radio erupted with frantic chatter. "Suspect is fleeing. Repeat. Suspect is fleeing." Ramirez stepped toward the window, peering down at the street below. "Detective," he said slowly, voice tightening. Bennett turned sharply. "What is it?" Ramirez swallowed hard. "Tyler's car just turned onto this street." Grace's breath caught as Ramirez stepped back from the window, face drained of color. "It's him," he repeated. "Tyler's car just turned onto the street." For a moment, no one moved. The room felt suspended, like the air itself was waiting. Richard instinctively pulled Grace behind him, shielding her with an arm that trembled ever so slightly. Olivia froze, gripping her phone as though it were the only anchor she had. Detective Bennett reacted first. "Lights off. Move away from the windows," she ordered sharply. Officers outside were already scrambling, forming a perimeter, their radios crackling with controlled urgency. Grace allowed Richard to guide her back, but her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst from her ribs. "What does he want?" she whispered. Bennett's jaw tightened. "Control. He's losing it everywhere else, so he's coming back to the only place he thinks he can take it." 8. Grace shivered, not from fear alone, but from a realization she hadn't been ready to face. He hadn't come here because he loved her. He had come because she no longer feared him. And for men like Tyler, that was unforgivable. Outside, a loud screech echoed, tires grinding against pavement, then a man shouting, more officers yelling, a door slamming, heavy footsteps. Grace couldn't see him, but she felt his presence, like a storm, pressing against the walls. Ramirez pressed a hand to his earpiece. "Officers have him at gunpoint. He's refusing to get on the ground." Richard pulled Grace even closer. "You're safe," he murmured. "He's not getting inside." But Grace shook her head, voice trembling. "Dad, he wasn't coming to hurt me this time." Olivia turned sharply. "Grace, don't." "He was coming to perform for an audience," Grace whispered. "To make himself look like the victim. To twist the story one more time." And she was right. Minutes later, officers finally forced Tyler to the ground. His shouts echoed up to the balcony like venom carried on cold night wind. "She's lying. She set me up. All of you are blind. I'm the victim, me." Grace closed her eyes. His voice didn't shake her anymore, not the way it once had. The chains he'd wrapped around her mind had snapped the moment her son had taken his first fragile breath. Detective Bennett returned from the hallway, exhaling in relief. "He's in custody. They're transporting him to Central Holding. No bail hearing until morning." Grace let out a trembling breath she'd been holding for months. "It's over?" "Not yet," Bennett said, soft but firm. "But the law has him now, and he can't twist that." Richard touched her shoulder gently. "Grace, you did this. You stood up. You fought back." Grace swallowed hard. She wasn't sure she deserved the praise. She still felt broken in places she didn't know how to heal. But when she thought of her baby still tiny, still fighting, she knew she had chosen the right battle. That night, after officers cleared the area and the streets finally quieted, Grace returned to the hospital. She sat by her son's incubator, sliding her hand into the small opening meant for parents. "Sweetheart," she whispered, voice cracking, "Mommy's here, and we're both safe now." Her son's tiny fingers curled around the tip of hers, weak, but unmistakably alive. Richard watched from the doorway, eyes softening. "He's stronger than he looks." "So is she," Olivia murmured beside him. Grace lifted her head, gaze steadying through the NICU glass. She felt something rise inside her, not just survival, but rebirth. A new beginning that didn't erase her scars, but honored them. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Detective Bennett. "Tomorrow morning, the judge will issue the final charges. Be prepared. This will change everything. Thanks for watching." Grace tightened her hold on her son's tiny hand as the weight of the moment settled over her. Because tomorrow wasn't just another day. Tomorrow was the day the city would finally choose justice. The morning sun rose over Manhattan like a reluctant witness, pale and cold. Grace walked into the courthouse with Richard and Olivia on either side, Detective Bennett just behind them. She felt different today, not lighter exactly, but steadier, as if the last pieces of her old life had finally settled into place. Her son was stable, Tyler was in custody, and today, the city would hear the truth. Inside, the courtroom overflowed. Reporters filled every bench. Cameras flashed despite the judge's warnings, their clicks echoing against the marble walls. Grace took a slow breath and stepped forward. The weight of 1,000 hidden bruises suddenly replaced with something stronger purpose. The judge entered, papers in hand. The room fell silent. After review of all evidence, he began, including medical reports, security footage, eyewitness statements, and newly surfaced allegations. The court finds sufficient grounds to formally charge Tyler Miller with felony domestic assault, attempted harm of an unborn child, coercion, destruction of evidence, and aggravated assault for prior incidents, now corroborated by multiple witnesses. A whisper rippled through the crowd. Grace felt her heart thud, not with fear, but relief so sharp it almost hurt. The judge continued, "Given the severity and pattern of violence, bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody until trial." Richard closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. Olivia squeezed Grace's arm. Bennett allowed herself a small, rare smile. Then Tyler stood, handcuffed, unshaven, eyes wild, not the man Grace once loved, but a man stripped bare of excuses. "You ruined me," he screamed across the courtroom. "You and your rich family. You turned everyone against me." Grace didn't flinch. Not this time. "You ruined yourself, Tyler," she said softly, her voice carrying across the room with devastating clarity. Gasps echoed. Even the judge paused, startled by her calmness. Tyler lunged forward, but officers held him back. "You think you won?" he roared. "You think they'll love you after this? You're nothing without me." Grace lifted her chin. "I'm more without you than I ever was with you. DZ." The court officer dragged him away as he continued screaming, but his voice no longer pierced her. His power over her had dissolved, burned away by truth, by courage, by survival. Outside, the courthouse steps were flooded with reporters again. This time, Grace didn't shrink. She stepped to the microphones, Richard standing solidly behind her. "My son is alive today because I chose to leave silence behind," she began. "If you are living in fear, if someone convinces you that your pain is your fault, hear me, it is not, and you are not alone." Her voice cracked, but she kept speaking. "Today wasn't about destroying someone. It was about protecting my child, and protecting every woman who's been told to hide her bruises." Flashbulbs exploded, people nodded, some wiped tears. The city, once divided, was now listening. After the press cleared, Richard placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your mother would be proud," he whispered. Grace blinked back tears. "Thank you for coming back for me." He pulled her close. "I never stopped wanting to." Later, she returned to the hospital. Her son lay in his incubator, tiny but stronger. Dr. Reyes met her there, offering a warm, relieved smile. "He's a fighter," he said softly. "So am I," she replied. And in the quiet hum of the NICU, Grace realized something. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a life rebuilt from truth, strength, and love. Then her son curled his hand around her finger, gripping it tight, as if claiming the world he had fought to enter. And in that moment, Grace knew the future finally belonged to them. So, that's how the story closes, my wonderful friends. And if you're still here with me right now, listening until this very last moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a real way. Maybe you saw a bit of yourself, or someone you love. Maybe you felt the weight of fear, the strength of healing, or the quiet courage it takes to start again. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Grace's suffering didn't end her life, it shaped her into someone stronger. That's a truth each of us can hold on to. Pain doesn't get the final word unless we hand it the pen. And Seneca once wrote, "Sometimes, even to live is an act of courage." If you're living through something heavy right now, please remember, you're already braver than you know. Healing isn't loud. It's a quiet, steady return to yourself. If this story touched you, even a little, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Not just for us, but so more people who need these messages of strength and hope can find them. We're here with you, and we keep going. Together.